Hey there, Internet friends, and welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me this week we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, what's going on, Trevor?
What is going on? Cameron finally found his pixel glasses that he's been looking for many weeks to throw them on. So we kind of got a little matching set today. Today we're going to be talking about Airborne Kingdom, Unpacking, Tales of Arise, and some of the early seasons of Dimension 20. So stay tuned for that. But before we dive into that, a little bit of housekeeping. If you like what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast everywhere you can, all that fun stuff. And I realize doing the housekeeping section when I don't also have the Patreon rigmarole to go through as we kind of sunset that. It's like, oh, housekeeping, real quiet. So I guess I'll throw in there like, oh, hey, also check out our YouTube channel for Let's Plays every Tuesday and Thursday. And tentatively, I keep hearing murmurings that this is going to happen, but it sounds like the Austin crew is planning on doing some kind of stream to kind of celebrate our recent anniversary sometime in the next couple weekends. Whether or not that actually happens, I don't know. They're all kind of planning that on their side of things and not really keeping me in the loop. But if it happens, you can find that over at twitch.tv/thatnerdysite. So go ahead and give us a follow there for if we ever actually do get our shit together and stream. But yeah, let us hop in, I guess. First, Airborne Kingdom. Cameron, you were telling me a little bit before we started recording. This came out last year, but is apparently just now releasing on console. And you've been spending some time with it. So yeah, tell me what Airborne Kingdom is all about.
So, Airborne Kingdom is a really nice, wonderful indie game from a studio called The Wandering Band. They are made up of mostly former ex-Visceral developers. Visceral, of course, being the EA studio behind some of the Battlefield games, and also Dead Space, the Dead Space trilogy. So Visceral Games, unfortunately, was shuttered back, I think, in 2017. And so these are a bunch of folks who stayed together on some level, and they came together to make this project. It is and this is the fun thing about it, is like, it is a world discovery city builder. What you are doing is it's in a world where essentially the world has, like, whether it was a calamity or an apocalypse or something happened, but essentially a golden age passed by. But during that golden age, there was this airborne kingdom, this massive city that traveled through the air and connected the world together with each other. And it was done in a way that was where people lived in harmony, and it shared the world's culture with each individual kingdom and settlement. And it was this massive metropolis that disappeared one day, and whether it was with that or something else, so went society, or rather the interconnectivity between the society. So in a lot of ways, that way I would consider it a little bit similar to Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding, and the idea that you're connecting areas to each other and bringing, information and connectivity and society, the integrals of society to each place. But instead of it being like two lonely people out in a bunker, it's entire communities, and each community is different. They each have specific things that they do. Some are more traditional kingdoms. Other places have no leadership. They are just ruled by the general consensus. And it's done in a very minimalist way that, it makes it for a very simple game, but there is a level of building out your city because you're airborne, which means you have to take in consideration for things like weight, lift that you have for the technology that lifts your city up in the air, propulsion, as well as providing basic needs and services and comforts to your populace and keeping people satisfied, because otherwise they leave. So it's a matter of that. It starts off where you'll have a lot of people who are workers willing to work and do stuff, but later as you build out your city, and that you use those workers to they get in little biplanes, which is adorable, and they fly down and they collect resources from the world. And so as you're traveling, you're picking up resources as you go. And it's done in a way that's just extremely cool. I've really, really enjoyed my time with it. I think that it stands out as being a really stellar game. It has a really cool Southeast Asian aesthetic to it in ways that I would describe as like there's a lot of stuff that seems to be like there's some stuff that I would say is a little bit like you'd see from architecture from places like Thailand, India, Indonesia, places like that that have a there's a lot of influence from those design aspects, I would say. And there is but otherwise it's a very homogenous, very generalized world, and it's super cool. When you get to a new city, a new kingdom, as it were, or settlement, however you want to call it, there's little settlements that are like little townships that you can discover and you can recruit people from. And depending on how happy your people are, the more people you might be able to recruit. As your city grows, it becomes harder for you to keep everybody happy and satisfied, which leads you to having to make different research discoveries, which you actually pick up from blueprints from the different cities that you go to. And each city you go to, there's a quest that you have to do to essentially gain their trust. And then you build what's called a sky bridge, which is essentially this like collaboration thing. And each city will send you a small bit of resources, whether it's iron, cotton, what it might be, that you then have facilities on your airship or on your airborne city to, you have processing areas. The thing about processing areas, fun little tidbit, you can't put them next to a housing district because the people don't like the noise and smell of the factories.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to there's all sorts of little things like that, and you have to build pathways that lead people around. It's super cool. People don't want to live next to the turbines that lift the city because they do too much noise.
Yeah.
It's stuff like that that's just very, very cool. And it's about like discovering stuff, and like one quest I went on was to find this was an area that needed help, and so they sent people off to try to find help, and you're there helping them, but they're like, oh, but what about our people? So you go and look for their search party. You basically form yourself as a search party and go to find their lost wandering people.
Mm-hmm.
And then you bring them back. It's done in such a really cool way that feels supernatural. Super space natural, not supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
It's just such a really cool little game. It's available on PlayStation 4/5, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, and PC. The console versions just came out last week. It's been an absolute stellar time with it. I haven't beaten the game yet, but it has a very relaxed feel to it. I think that this is a very good pickup for the Nintendo Switch. So if you've been, chomping at the bit for something to play on your Switch that's a bit more laid back, not so much of like a Metroid Dread or a Shin Megami Tensei 5, lengthy, intense games, this is probably a cool, chill game for you to pick up and play.
Yeah, I've been, as you were talking about it, I pulled up their website and was watching a trailer, and I was like, oh, yeah, this looks like really cool. I mean, like, first I saw the art style of it, and I was like, oh, that looks incredibly cool, and kind of I see the kind of Southeast Asian influences that you're kind of alluding to and describing there.
But still very minimalist.
Yeah, very, very minimalist. A lot of maybe Middle Eastern vibes as well. Like ancient, or thousands of years ago kind of vibes.
There's something, I think it has like an old human history vibe, I guess would probably be the best way to put it.
Yeah.
And of course, like the cultures we're pulling from, Middle East, Southeast Asian, these are the thousands upon thousands of years of like architecture and what we can kind of think of as ruins and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah, and then just like watching a trailer and seeing the gameplay, and I kind of I started seeing this as you started describing these aspects of like, oh, it's part Sim City builder kind of thing, but also
Mhm.
like part RTS where you're going out and you're getting resources, and you're like your biplanes are your villagers of an Age of Empires kind of game or something like that, and
Yeah.
they're going out and getting those resources and bringing them back. I saw like helping restore the Great Conservatory or something like that, and working
Mhm.
to kind of like working with the people of the ground to kind of rebuild their lands and stuff. And yeah, it looks really, really cool. And so, like, suddenly this game has gone from something I had not heard about or really seen anything on, to like being like, oh, I should try and check this out by year end and see if I want to throw it into my game of the year conversation. So very
It's
cool.
definitely in mine. It is a game that honestly, it's like I've been trying to play other stuff, but I keep getting drawn back to it. It's like, oh, I only have like an hour or two to play something.
Hmm.
I could play this. I will finish like my leveling duties in duty roulettes in Final Fantasy 14, and then I will be like, I don't want to raid or I don't want to do trials. I want to just go back to playing Airborne Kingdom.
Yeah.
It is fun in a way that it's like I said, it's chill. There's no combat. Um, but you get those panic moments where like you're in an area that, like, for example, doesn't have a lot of coal. So you can't send people out to get coal easily, or like
Hmm.
the coal deposits you do find are very small. And so you're all of a sudden you're like, okay, cool. How do I keep my airship up aloft? Like,
Hmm.
what do I have to do? What do I have to do? Find. I've had to like destroy. Like, I had built temples to raise the kind of like morale of my people at the beginning of the game, but they weren't as necessary now. I destroyed those temples so I could get the people working in those temples back as workers, so that I could use them to increase my gathering force.
Hmm.
Um, and then I left these vacant squares in my kingdom. And so what I ended up doing is I filled them in with greenery, which is something you can pick up and research later. That basically allows you to plant little square parks, and that brings up people's comfort and what they like.
Yeah.
And like all of a sudden, my city went from being like very like urban and industrial to all of a sudden having a lot of green. I can plant farms and have like water condenser gatherings, and I have those on my ship to try to mitigate the loss of food and water. Because I don't know if you know this, if you have a city full of people, you need to have a large enough storage of water and food.
Hmm.
Otherwise, people like will leave because they're like, we're starving, we're leaving.
Yeah, no. Again, SimCity did a good job of teaching me that kind of information.
Yeah,
Long before the rest of life would. But yeah, like this definitely looks like, and you mentioning like stuff like residential people don't like living near industrial districts. I'm like SimCity 101 right there.
hmm
So yeah, very cool that yeah, I'm super jazzed to try and check this out. What have you've been playing this on console, or have you been playing
Yeah,
it on
I've
PC?
been playing it on I've been playing it on PS5.
Okay.
It's the PS4 version of the game.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like, but it's like it plays super fine, totally well on PS5, no problem.
How does the
Um,
how are the controls slash UI? Because this definitely seems like a game that probably is built and optimized for PC, and obviously came out on PC last year, first. But did they do a good job of kind of like converting like mouse and keyboard controls to a
yes,
console setting? Okay.
they 100% did. The cursor to move around is the same thing as your camera. So it like basically it is using the joystick on the controller as a mouse,
Hmm.
and then you just use X to click on stuff, and it's super like when you're doing like drawing out paths, it's super like you can use the D-pad to just be like a bit more accurate on how you want things laid out. But it does a really great job of uh, gridding stuff in for you.
Hmm.
So
Cool.
I don't know how freeform it is on PC, but its controls are really tight. And what's really cool about the game is like normally in like a big RTS thing, you could like roll over an area that has kind of like the fog of war around it or whatever, and kind of like take a peek at like maybe you can make something out there, like you want to go over to it. Not something that occurs here. There's a map of an area, but it's just very like it's a very basic generalized map of like shapes of stuff, but it's blank until you roll over it.
Hmm.
But what's really cool is you can't leave your ship's periphery very far. So you can set your course way out there, but it's super cool.
You're flying out
Um,
into the unknown.
yeah, it's tons of the unknown feelings. Like some like they gave me a pop up to say, hey, you're about to go over an area that is known for having basically like it's like a massive like imagine like swamp, but instead of it being swamp water, it's seawater.
Okay.
And so this entire area is called the Shallows, and the Shallows are just like, and because there's seawater everywhere, there's not a lot of coal deposits, and water is like super like the oases that have the water are a lot smaller than they are in the other areas, and it's like you have to plan these things out. So before I launched over there, I like built up my stockpiles of food and water and coal, and then like traversed into the unknown, and it was like a really cool feeling of discovery. It's wild, man. It's such a cool game. I really, really can't like recommend it enough for people who enjoy these kinds of games, and people who are just like, for a lot of the games that have come out this year, they've been like a lot of loud stuff, a lot of whether it's Call of Duty and Battlefield or like I mentioned earlier, Shin Megami Tensei or Metroid Dread. A lot of games that have come out, Tales of Arise. A lot of games are like these loud, busy games. This is a very chill, simple game to just really relax to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a lot of fun.
Cool.
I've really enjoyed it.
Well, speaking of chill games to just like relax to, I played through Unpacking this week on Xbox Game Pass. Not sure where else it is available. I mean, I imagine it's out there on PC, and maybe like Switch, maybe. I don't know if it's on PlayStation right now, but Unpacking, a game that I probably saw as like a GIF concept of a game first, more than anything else. But it's basically like you go through a series of levels where you're in a room or two rooms or a house of like, I think at most like 7 rooms or something like that, and you basically have some boxes to open and unpack, and you basically just kind of like figure out where you want to place these items in each thing. And so it is basically an unpacking simulator. But it's over the course of the game, like it is clearly established that you are the same person unpacking at different points in her life. So like the first level is like 1994 or something like that, maybe 1998, and you're unpacking in a child's room. It's like it's your first room by yourself, and so like you're unpacking your toys and figuring out where around the bedroom you want to kind of lay them out. And then like the next level is off to like a college dorm, and so now you have like the bedroom and like a tiny kitchenette and a bathroom that you're kind of like unpacking in. And so you switch between each of the rooms, and usually each room has like some boxes to unpack. And of course, you've tried your best maybe to put like all of the items for that room in those boxes, but you might find like, oh, I'm in the bathroom, but I found like a dish towel for the kitchen or something like that, or like the toaster is in the bedroom, and so I'm gonna take that and move to the other room and put it where it's supposed to go. And so over the course of the game, you kind of like progress through this character's life at different stages of her life, and it tells an interesting, cool little story in that way. And the mechanic is just like unpacking. Once you've like fully unpacked a box, like you click the box and it basically you fold it up and it just poofs out of there and disappears. And then you kind of like continue on and until you've got everything unpacked. And once you've got everything unpacked, you'll get like little indicators for items that are out of place or in the wrong room or something like that. Or, hey, this is really an item that should be on a shelf somewhere or in a cabinet rather than just like sitting on the ground or sitting on the floor or something like that. And so like little things will get highlighted as like, oh, these are the things I still need to kind of like move to the right place and figure out, what the right thing is for them. And so it's cool in that little regard. I will say that over the course of my, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 hours with the game, it did become a little to the point where I was just like, I get it. I wish I didn't have to. I wish there wasn't as many things I needed to unpack in each level, especially like by the later ones where you're unpacking like 5 or 6 rooms worth of stuff. And
Geez, okay, yeah.
especially once you get to like, oh, I'm unpacking a lot of clothes now. You unpack every thing of socks and every bra and every dress and every shirt and pair of pants and every hanger for those things. And you got to figure out, okay, which of these do I want to hang up versus which do I want to leave folded, and which shoes, and do I want to like pair up the shoes and all this. And it turns into like, there's so many things. This is why unpacking in just normal life isn't exactly fun. um, but it like I recorded a let's play of it that'll probably go up this week, and like I'm actually debating whether or not I want to upload it, because it's like 40 minutes of me just kind of like very chill and zen, like moving things around, like those first 2 levels, I think, and just being like, all right, and like I'm not engaging, I'm not talking a ton. um but it was just kind of a very, in the same way you're kind of talking about, like amidst a season of very busy games like a Deathloop or crazy things like that. Like, this is just kind of a game of just like, okay, like I'm slowly going around unpacking things, kind of just doing things at my own pace. um there are like a ton of little like achievementy kind of things, that you can kind of like, oh, like as an example, in one of the kitchens, it was like, okay, I've unpacked magnets, and I have like number magnets and like math symbols and stuff. So if I put the 1 + 2 = 3 all in a line on the fridge, I pop a little achievement that says like problem solved or whatever, and like, oh, you noticed that these kind of all went together and create a little thing. Or and so there's a lot of little of those kinds of like almost secrets to find in each of the unpacking levels that you can do. And some of them I uncovered just because I was like, oh yeah, I definitely want to put these items together, because that makes sense for me and like in my mind and stuff. And so there's a lot of fun and joy in that. And then there's like just this fun, like, it is entirely a story told through like this environmental storytelling kind of aspect. But it was cool just kind of like getting to weirdly know this character that you never see or anything, because you are playing as them and you're just unpacking their stuff across all these different like houses, and seeing like the things that are clearly very important to them because they survive move after move after move. Like, like having a stuffed animal from that first house still carrying through till the end of the game, and you see it and you unpack it kind of every time. And the character is very like art driven, and so there's like art supplies that you're unpacking kind of like every level, and seeing how those come and go, and the character's style, and how the character's style mix and matches with their partner's style through different levels over the game and stuff like
Mm.
that. And being like, oh, okay, this, like, I clearly know this is like my character's clothes versus like the clothes of the other person that it lives in this house now. And just kind of like getting a feel for that. So like, yeah, really, really cool, really chill thing. Does maybe wear out its welcome a little bit for me, and kind of plays a little too long. Like I played the first chunk a few days ago, and then I was like, oh, I want to, for the podcast, I want to like have finished this game. So I went back and finished it last night. And it was very much like like I was playing through that while watching like AEW Full Gear or something like that, and just being like, okay, like this is very much like I'm just kind of like going through the motions in the game at this point, um, uh, because there's just so many things. And again, like once you get to, oh, I've got 3 boxes in each of the 7 rooms of this house that I'm having to go through and navigate. And oh, I'm in a bathroom, but this is clearly a kitchen thing, so now I got to scroll through and get back to the kitchen to like place it in the kitchen, and then like organize and situate stuff like that. There's definitely a lot of like, man, I wish I didn't, like, especially like the walk-in closet in that last room. I was like, like so many clothes and so many boxes worth of shit. I took that one out first because I was like, this is going to be a hassle. And yeah, that alone probably took like 10 minutes of just unpacking item by item. And I would get to the point where I was just like, I'm just going to throw everything on the floor first so I can clear out the boxes and just get a sense of how much shit I've got to put like around this place. um and so like there became this weird like unpacking strategy of a very like chill and relaxing game, but it was like, yeah, I dread when I have to actually like pack up all the shit behind me and like move into another place. Maybe that's why I haven't really moved in 17 years or whatever it's been, apart from like a couple detours here and there, because I'm just not a huge fan of like in unpacking IRL or packing or unpacking IRL. It like this game has kind of like made me dread that a little bit, like that actual process of going through that. And so yeah, like realizing how blessed I am that I haven't had to do that a ton in my life. But yeah, that's unpacking. Um, Very chill little game. I finished it now. I'm probably not going to go back and try and like find what all those little hidden things were. There's also like there's little photo mode stuff you can kind of play around with it and do that. Like and when you finish each level, you can like kind of do a replay thing to just see how you unpacked everything, and it'll kind of like rewind and just kind of like fast forward through everything. If you
That's
want to
cool.
if you want to do that, and I've seen people like have a lot of fun playing around with that. Like in that first kids room, you're unlocking a lot of, or you're unpacking a lot of toys and stuffed animals and stuff, as well as a soccer ball. And I saw a video that somebody had made of, they basically like moved everything around so that like when they played the video at the end, it looked like all of the toys were playing a game of soccer, around the floor of the room and stuff. So you got like
That's
a
fun.
couple stuffed animals and a troll doll and an action figure, all like, bouncing around that stuff. We'll talk about it a little bit more in when we get to the Dimension 20 stuff. But like like your character very clearly into like maybe tabletop RPGs, because she has
Nice.
a shirt that has a dodecahedron on it, 20-sided die, like that continues along, as well as like a giant 20-sided die that you can kind of like place out there on shelves and stuff like that. And so like as somebody who just is getting back into that world, or interested in that world myself, I was like, oh cool. Like, so I always made sure that like the 20-sided die was like on a place of prestige in like a living room or something like that. There's also a lot of fun, like the whole thing's pixel art style. So some things were like very clearly, I see what this is. Like, oh, this is very clearly a GameCube or a GameCube type of thing. And so like also, a handful of GameCube controllers or GameCube video game boxes. So like when I'm putting those up on the shelf, I can see like the little like purple logo kind of thing at the bottom or whatever, and kind of group them together. Or you get into like the DVDs and Blu-rays era, and zooming in and like figuring out what DVDs you have. Like one of them I saw was like, oh, this is very clearly Jaws. That's a cute little thing. But then on the flip side, because it's pixel art, there were a ton of things where it's like, I have no idea what this is. Like this just looks like a sack of something, and I didn't know what it was. And so like when it's like one of the things that has the outline, and I need to figure out like the right place for it, and oh, it turns out like the right place for this thing is clearly not the bathroom. Okay, so what is this thing? Trying to put it in like a closet and just kind of like leaving it in there. Nope, that's not the right place. Finally, I finally just guessed into it on one of the levels, and then on the last level, like it was one of the last things I placed down, and I looked at it, I was like, oh, that's cat food or dog food or what? It's pet food. It's a bag of pet food. So yeah, I guess the bathroom was not the right place for it.
Yeah.
And doing that. So there was definitely a mix of like, I don't quite know what this is supposed to be, so I'm not sure where I'm supposed to put it, and it turns into like a guessing game of like, what is this and where does it belong kind of stuff. But yeah, it's it's a fun little kind of just relaxing game to just kind of like chill out to. But yeah, it was maybe 30 minutes to an hour longer than I would have liked it, even as like a short 4-hour experience. I think like saying that myself, it reminds me of the vibes you have kind of shared with me of like Florence, of like, you just don't see like that game wears out. Like you get it, you get the premise of that game, and you don't need to see the next 45 minutes of it or whatever.
Uh,
So yeah, that's Unpacking.
I just felt Florence was like, for as short as that game is, it was like it still cost too much money.
Yeah. That's, I mean, like this, like I imagine this is probably like $15-$20 or something, if not on Game Pass. And I say it's, I mean, like I don't see that as a very, like I if I had paid the $20 for it or whatever and played it not on Game Pass, I would have been like, okay. I mean, not my cup of tea in the end, and I have those issues with it, but like it would have been fine. Like I paid that. That's fine. $20, the cost of a movie or
Yeah,
something like that. Like I got my experience out of it. But yeah, the fact that it's on Game Pass, even more appealing. So it just becomes a matter of like it's your time, and if that sounds like a cool way to just kind of like relax and unwind and like spend your time, then go check out Unpacking. But if you're maybe like, I don't think I would have fun unpacking and moving things around these rooms and getting this kind of like overarching story of this character over, the course of their life or whatever, then maybe skip this one. But I had a good enough time with it. Probably won't make its way onto like my game of the year conversation stuff, but I enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. Chill little thing to experience. So yeah, that was that. Let's throw it back over to you, Cam, for
yeah.
Tales of Arise. This is one of those, like, it's a Tales game, so
Mhm.
I've seen a lot of people jumping on it, enjoying it. I imagine these games are largely like Final Fantasy like, where it's like if you haven't played the other Tales games, you're not going to be missing out if you
Oh yeah,
just jump into Tales of Arise. Um,
yeah. There are some games that are interconnected,
yeah,
but
but they're usually
like
like Tales of Symphonia 1 and Tales of Symphonia 2 or something like that, right?
um,
I don't know. I'm just
I think those are
I'm
the only
pulling
ones that are
names.
like that.
Yeah.
In this case, like so, my first Tales game was actually on the last generation, Tales of Berseria,
Okay.
which is actually a prequel to the Tales of Symphonia, I think is what it is. But it is a prequel by like thousands of years.
Gotcha.
And Berseria introduces a world that sets up the world in Zenphonia or whatever it is. I never played that one. Alex O'Neill told me what I needed to know after because I was like, yeah, what happens after Berseria? Or no, I don't think he told me. He's like, yeah, you find out some stuff in the follow-up game. I was like, I don't want to play it, but let me look it up. And then it just like tore my heart apart because I'm like, what the actual F, guys? Like, what is this? The people I love. It has a very satisfying ending. It's a very good game. But no, Tales of Arise is a completely different game. It seems more sci-fi than the other games. The other games seem to have had like a little bit of science mixed in with some stuff. You know, there are sometimes people who use guns and whatnot, but this is a very much more sci-fi type of game. Because you're literally like you play a slave named Iron Mask called so for that moniker is given to him because he has a metal mask that covers his face and head and like basically covers up his entire head, man, in the Iron Mask style.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, keeping that sealed. And so he has amnesia, doesn't know who he is. And so the old man who helped him find him and get him back to health, called him Iron Mask. And so that's his name. And the cool thing about this game is that because it's sci-fi, you're like, oh, okay, cool. The magic is all based off of like magic is like a system, but it's like a science. It is a natural thing that is understood. It is harnessed and utilized in a technological way. There are the two races, Renans and Danans. Renans are from like it's like the prologue is later like the Danans thought that when you die, your soul gets taken to Renan. And then it turns out, no. Renan is actually a much more technologically advanced society, and they have come to conquer the Danan society. And they wipe out Danan culture. They basically subjugate this entire planet to slavery. And it turns out, like, this is not really a spoiler, but it is part of like the plot of it, is that the reason why they're doing that is because they can harness more of the magical resource of the world of Danon, if they put they embed crystals in Danon's hands when they're born, and essentially as a Danon lives their life and their life expires slowly over years of torturous slavery, they release energy, like a raw energy that then gets taken and converted into other energies for Renan society. So the actual life force of Danon's is used as a resource, and Renan society is super survival for the fittest. Might makes right, and you're basically caught up in a contest for who will become the next ruler of Renan society. But there's all this sorts of stuff where it's you join up with a rebellious effort. You kind of are leading people through this idea of revolution and a very liberating themselves and preparing for revolution. And the biggest catalyst is that the source of Iron Mask's power for this revolution comes from a Renan lady, a young woman who, through a fateful encounter, and it turns out that that because Iron Mask can't feel pain, which is a fun thing, he can't feel pain. But because of that, he can wield this sword of fire, which has a backlash of it hurts him too, and so he has to be healed. Which, by the way, if you use that fire sword in combat, you do small damages to yourself, and so it's a whole fun play of stuff with it. It's really cool. There's some story elements that are very cliched RPG. That's kind of that's kind of just something that the Tales games do.
Mm-hmm.
It has some janky dumb stuff old school RPG wise, and it's fine. That stuff is fine, but really where I think this game shines is not even really with its story. The concept is interesting, but really it's the combat and gameplay and exploration and the way that you upgrade things and you grow, and each character plays differently if you want to play any of the individual characters of your party. It's just a super cool game. Mm-hmm. Gameplay is super tight. Really enjoyed it, or have been enjoying it. I have no idea how far I am into the game. I'm in my, I'm in my third kingdom. I have gone through the initial area, which is a fire area. The second area, which is a cold wind / light area. It's a whole thing. And then the third one I'm in is the earth area. And that one is as a place totally different from the other two, but it also ties, and I think the overarching themes of this game are actually really cool because it ties into what does it mean to live in a free society? What does it mean to be free? Iron Mask, because he has no past, has no concept of the only thing he's ever known is working himself to death as a Danon slave. And that's what a lot of Danons, that's all they know. But he doesn't have family or friends other than the doctor that saved him. And so it's become a matter of him learning things and coming to realization of what does it mean for me to be free? And as he's seen as a hero to the people, he has to ask him, that's an even bigger question, because what does that mean for myself and other people to be free of slavery? And what does it mean it's this entire other thing? It's if you just do what other people tell you to do, are you only rebelling for yourself because people have told you that you're the hero that they need, or are you actually making that decision yourself? And so it has a lot of aspects of that. And as you get into different areas, the way that the Renan lords have subjugated the people are different. They use different different tactics and different styles of dominance. And it's cool to see the approach done in different ways. That makes, I'm really interested in exploring the rest of the world because I want to see how each Renan Lord rules each area. Because it's just fascinating to see this, this different approach to subjugating people and keeping them enslaved.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Like as you're talking about that, I'm like I'm looking at trailers and stuff, and I'm like, I wonder, like these kinds of conversations make me realize that you and I often pull very different things from games. Like
That's true. Yeah.
I like how much of this is an overt thing that like this is very apparent in the story that like these are the themes that they're trying to approach, or how much is it just like, oh, they came up with like an they didn't want it to all be like the same kind of like bad guy, and so each bad guy is just like using different ideas or whatever, and you're like, oh, but the tactics of how they subjugate the people are just so intricate and deep, and
it is actually I wouldn't say it's deep or intricate. It's just interesting to see different approaches to it. But no, it's explicit in the dialogue of the game.
Okay.
The rebel leader who kind of inspires Iron Mask to take up the mantle of rebellion, outright says he stops Iron Mask at one point. His name's Zephyr. He says, like, listen, you have to make a decision, because like, don't just go along with this because you're getting caught up in it. Like, make a decision for yourself. Is this something you want to do yourself? And when you make those decisions, that's what it means to be free. Don't do something just because other people tell you to do it, or because you feel pressure to do something. Make the decision for yourself. And like that inspires Iron Mask to become somebody who, and Iron Mask has moments where he talks to his other companions about his internal struggle that he's feeling. Like, he outright says, like, am I doing this just because people want me to be a hero, of this revolution for them, or do they want me to, or is this something I want to do for myself? And he's like, I want to free Dan, like the Danon people. I want to do this for the people of Dana, and I want to it is a journey of self-discovery, but it's done in a way that I really enjoy, because otherwise, most of the time, amnesia stories are either completely obvious or trivial and pointless. Like, oh, they didn't really it was done as a MacGuffin or a red herring or something. This one is being done as like a very, like, at least narratively, being done in a way that is about, everything is alien to him, because he doesn't have like understanding or comprehension of anything that you would gain growing up in the society, even as a Danon slave. And so it gives a good opportunity for exposition, but it's not just exposition. Like, he's not having amnesia for this case for the purpose of exposition. It's something that's useful as a tool, but it's done to also impact his character, because I think the character of Iron Mask, as it goes forward, and he does later get an actual proper name. He's not just called Iron Mask through the entire game.
Yeah.
But I don't want to spoil it because it's part of the plot.
I mean, okay. I'm looking at character, like, I'm on their website and I can see his character's name. So like,
yeah, I didn't know it. Like, I didn't bother with that. I was just like, I'll just like, when it happens, it'll happen.
Yeah.
And the moment that it happens is actually like really freaking cool. So I didn't want to spoil it.
Okay.
Let that be out there for people to, like, if you want to look it up, you can. Otherwise, go in blind. I would suggest going in blind, because it makes that moment like kind of triumphant. It's pretty cool.
So it's not, it's not, oh, he's amnesia. He's got amnesia just so that like he can serve as a perfect point of view character for the player coming into this world and not knowing anything. It does have like more narrative consequence that like he has a past, he just doesn't remember it, and it'll be doled out over time, kind of stuff.
Pretty much. Yeah, it's a whole thing where. But it's also because they can't feel pain. It's like, well, why can't you feel pain? I don't know. I have amnesia. Like, I have a medical condition.
Two.
It's kind of like
if you can't feel pain and you have amnesia, that's two. Yeah.
Yeah, it's two. That's two of them. No, it's great. Because it'll be like, you get to this area, the second area where it's really cold, which is in complete opposite of the first area where it's really hot all the time. And, the character's like, oh, we need to stop. Like, we need to find shelter. Like, basically like we're freezing out here. And the main character and Iron Mask is just like, oh yeah, like, oh really, we should stop. Oh, I don't like, okay. And then he sneezes, and they're like, you have a cold. And he goes, oh, but I don't feel I don't feel like, and they're like, because you can't feel the sensation of being cold,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't feel the sensation of being hot. Like,
Yeah.
it does play into that. Like, he is like,
Just because he can't feel it doesn't mean it's not wreaking havoc on his body.
Yeah.
It's the, like, if you stuck your hand on a stove and didn't have any nerve endings in your hand, it doesn't mean your hand's not burning. It just means you're not feeling the pain to have that reaction of, I should remove my hand from the stove. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, but that happened at one point. You're like at like a little like side conversation when you sit down at like a rest point. Is Iron Master just goes, "Oh wow, my hands can't stop shaking," and they're like, "It's cause you're cold, like get near to the fire." But it's nice because he still has his other senses. It's just touch.
Yeah.
He can't, and like what comes with that. It's very cool, but it also like it keeps him alien from everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really cool is that the other main character, she also has something about her that keeps her like different from other people, including other Renans. It's a really cool game, cool concepts. I wish I wish that there was sometimes better writing, or that some things were a bit more interesting. But like, my interest in this game is not really like, it kind of has like a very like okay, like the plot and like the events and what you're trying to do is there and been done before and probably done better in a lot of other ways, but really I'm interested in seeing just kind of like more of this, like more like, because there's still so much about Renan society that's still a mystery.
Mm-hmm.
To the characters, and like how there's so much about it that's still going on that I'm really curious about. But it like, this world is very interesting. The cultures of this world are very interesting, and the combat of the game makes fighting through it super fun. So like, I just think this is a really standout, good solid game. Like I said, I'm only in the third area. I have no idea how many areas there are. Judging by like kind of like the numbers that they've been throwing out about areas and lords and whatnot of the different areas, I'm probably maybe halfway through the game.
Okay.
Maybe a quarter, somewhere between a quarter and halfway through the game. Somebody is going to be coming in here pretty soon and being like, or like they'll be here and they're like, sucker, you still have 100 hours to go. Because it's a Tales game.
Yeah.
And that can easily happen because I can spend a lot of time just like trying to get materials from creatures. And so I spend like an hour just grinding, and it's fun because it's fun. Gosh, at one point I was fighting a group of creatures, and a giant dragon swooped in from the sky, and all of a sudden I had to fight this dragon, and that fight was freaking hard, dude. So hard and so difficult. Like, wiped me twice. It took me the time I beat it, it took me like 40 plus minutes in that fight. Super cool, super hardcore, a lot of fun. So there's super challenging fights in the game as well that are you get like really good rewards for as well. So just very rewarding game, rewarding gameplay, and so far like a rewarding story. It's different. The thing, like, I would say if you want a very excellent story, you're not going to find it here.
Mm-hmm.
But there is something very interesting and different about the story that it's telling that is keeping me in. So
cool. Awesome. Yeah, probably not typically my cup of tea, but I'm glad you're having a good time with it. So yeah, very cool. So we will then wrap up here with some Dimension 20 talk.
yes,
you and I talked about college humor on one of these episodes. I don't know, maybe 6 months ago or something like that, and I think you introduced the idea of Dimension 20 at that point, but I had no real frame of reference for it because I, like, apart from like, oh, they do Dungeons Dragons a la like a Critical Role kind of thing, and I have continued, over the course of our time, been watching like like actually will pop up in my YouTube feed recommended stuff, or they're
which
like
is a great show in and of itself.
yeah, or the
Same with
like
Game Changer.
the don't yeah Game Changer pops up every now and then, the don't break news that those bits that they do. And finally I bit the bullet and watched Fantasy High, or like started watching Fantasy High. I was like, and then just immediately got absorbed, watched the whole thing in like a couple of days. Went on to watch The Unsleeping City, which is I believe the third season of D20, or it's the second like real campaign of D20.
So yeah, it's the
Because
second
they do
season.
yeah
It's because there's
third well so I like long about way I finally bit the bullet and like paid for Dropout this week, and so in the
yeah.
Dimension 20 season breakdown they have all of the seasons and the side quests together, and the side quests
Mhm.
are like the Escape from Bloodkeep is season 2, and then
Yes.
Unsleeping City is season 3, and then Tiny Heist is season 4. And that's where I'm at now. I was telling Cameron I'm about a third of the way through Tiny Heist, which was their second side quest campaign a couple years ago. And so yeah, that's I've been just kind of like engulfing all of that. And Cameron and I talked on our Patreon early access episode that'll go live to everybody at the end of this month as our last one. We talked a little bit about me in the early stage of me kind of getting into this, and just the idea of like tabletop RPGs in general, and you know, getting into Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that. And so yeah, now I'm just like even more in as I'm going through these. I'm, you know, reading through like the player's handbook and stuff in some of my
Yeah, 'cause you picked
downtime
it
and
up.
stuff. Pick that up. And you know, getting excited at the potential of hopping into a campaign. I gushed with Cameron about like these ideas I've got for my own homebrew kind of like setting and idea.
And they're really cool.
So like seeing like the because going into this, I definitely had never heard of the idea or like the concept of homebrewing, and taking the ideas and the mechanics of Dungeons and Dragons, and then just like saying like, hey, we're not going to play this with elves and orcs and stuff like that. We're going to do it with a completely different like cast of characters or something like that. And you know, they'll still have the stats of all those characters, but we're going to reskin it and do that. And so like hopping into Fantasy High being the first one, and it being like still largely all those same ideas, the same kind of enemies, but set is as if it was like in a John Hughes movie and they're like at a high school kind of thing. I was like, oh, this is a cool subversion of what D&D is to me.
Yeah.
And I imagine to a lot of people.
Yeah, it's honestly why I suggest it so
Mhm.
much, because so much of the live play of whether it's Critical Role or anything else, it's so atypical.
Mhm.
It's all like, it's fantasy, so oh, I'm gonna be this sorcerer, I'm gonna be this, and so it largely depends on the players to develop characters that are interesting.
Mhm.
And so a lot of times people really enjoy, like, they like Critical Role because Critical Role does these incredibly long, detailed campaigns where characters are introduced, grow, have their backstories revealed. Like, they really do a great production of it, but at the end of the day, it's just fantasy.
Mhm.
Like, it's just general fantasy. And if you dig the story they're telling and the characters that are involved, then yeah, you'll probably enjoy it. My biggest problem is with Critical Role is their first season, their first campaign. You kind of start it in median res. Like, this was a homebrew or a home campaign
Yeah.
they brought into a studio,
Mhm.
and so you don't get to see the kind of beginnings of these characters. You kind of get it told through like backstory stuff, which is fine, but it's why I think a lot of people really like why things really blew up for Critical Role in their second campaign.
Yeah.
Because they
You
did a
could
proper
be there
introduction.
with the beginning,
Mhm.
like from the beginning, and kind of see that
Yeah.
whole journey. Yeah.
And I think that also created like the like kind of like some backlash and drama that they've been dealing with lately. I think has been due to like a very deep parasocial aspect that people have attached themselves to that show with. They're not just fans of the show as it's being told, but they feel like because like the idea that like got passed around by their community, I guess, was like it's like friends that you know at a table, And it's the parasocial struggle of like the best friends for Kind of Funny.
Yeah.
Like, we're called the best friends, and what does that mean? And like, it means different things to different other members of Kind of Funny. And it's a whole, but it also has like a massive, like, weirdness to it, because it is a definitive and recognized parasocial relationship that you have with a company of podcasting people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a bit different for you and I, because we've gotten to know, like a third of that company we knew before they were, like, we were friends with before they became
at this
members
point.
of the
Yeah,
company.
we were in the best friends community with a lot of them, and had hung out with them at events and stuff like that. Yeah, before they started working there.
Like, I was friends with Andy.
It's
on
definitely
Twitter
an interesting dynamic, but I get that, and it's definitely something I think really a lot of podcasting or streamer communities or YouTubing communities kind of deal with right now, is like this the barrier between like creator and fan is a lot more murky and a lot more blurred than like a movie star and their fans or something like that. The part of the relationship is built on like this idea that like, oh yeah, we're friends. I'm talking right to you as if you're my best friend, or as if you're kind of that. And so people kind of get maybe a warped perception of the reality of that relationship.
100%,
as it grows over time, and I mean, it's like, especially that kind of thing of like, people might listen to a podcast, and they might like listen to their favorite bit of a podcast or something like that, and so they'll have it like just memorized by heart or something, and like that's just a thing that people said around microphones 5 years ago, and like if you call that up or bring that back up, and it's like, did we say that? I mean, I take your word that we said it, but I don't remember saying it, because it was just another conversation in my life. Versus,
I think that's a
thing for consumption for people, kind of thing. And it's like, I kind of occasionally encounter that, just in the general of like looking back through things I've done sometimes, being like, I completely forgot I did that podcast, or that I've engaged with and chatted with that person or something like that. Just because it was like 2 hours of my life 3 years ago, in some cases it is just like, oh yep, that was a thing I did, but not a thing I've thought about a ton since. So like it's a weird world we kind of exist in right now. But anyway,
remember when you brought up Dutch hype like a month ago?
Yeah.
I had not thought of or said Dutch hype in years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when I heard that, I was like, hype for the Dutch. And then all of a sudden it clicked. I was like, oh yeah, I used to say that all the time.
Yeah.
Because it was at a time when my old podcast was like really like the only people listening were like a handful of people in the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, is it a VPN thing? Like, what's going on? It's like, no, just like a couple of people in the Netherlands really liked our podcast and like listened to it all the time. And were like really invested in it. Yeah. And I was like, I feel weird about it, because like, I don't like, talk to me, please.
Yeah.
But it's like, they're like, they are just the casual listener. And I was like, that's cool. We're their favorite gaming podcast, I guess. Shout out to KGN Naughty Gamers, and that bit there, but no, it's 100% that. Like, it's that, but it's also the aspect of like, yeah, you hear that bit and you internalize it. Now, here's the weird thing about me, is that's every aspect of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I weirdly pick up on little things that people do and say, and like internalize it as a characteristic of that person.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll be like, well, yeah, because you once said this, and this has happened with you, know.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really like, yeah, because this, and you're like, I don't know about that. I was like, yeah, and this is when it happened, and like I pull out more details, and it's like, the problem with that is that it comes off very creepy and stalker.
It's that, but it also is like things will get blurred, and our perceptions and memories change. And there was one I like, we won't dive into details on, but like you were like, oh yeah, like I was so mad at this person, or like you were so mad at this person. I was like, well, actually at that time you were really mad at this other person, and you were like, oh yeah, you're right. I completely forgot about that. Good for calling me out on that. And I was like,
100% that. Yes.
Anyway,
that was a
back to Critical Role / Dimension 20.
This
weird
but
tangent that we've gone down.
It's just been it's weird to see like And I think I get it. Like I've been watching a lot of stuff about like streamers and stuff break down. They're like, yeah, like the struggles with the community and like the parasocial aspect of it. Like massive, huge streamers like Pokimane, Valkyrae, Hassan Piker, and a couple other people. Like I've seen them talk about it, and I'm like, it's so fascinating. Like it's just like for me as somebody who has studied like digital media and like kind of like the non-human aspect of it, like the non-emotional aspect of like, you know, digital analytics and like online behavior, you know, statistics and stuff like that. But and like kind of on my end, I'm thinking like that. But then to be like, oh wait, yeah, no, you really do develop like this parasocial relationship, and it is not helped by I pay $5 and my message to you gets read and you acknowledge me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that, like, no, because I can remember like the first time ever being like acknowledged by like Gregor Collin back on the morning show.
Yeah.
Was like a like, oh my gosh, oh that's so amazing, it's great.
Oh, my name now exists in their head somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Or no, for me it was when I like threw out something random about something about Vita Island back in the day.
Yeah.
And Colin was just like, yeah, you can do that. And then Greg's like, oh no, I know this guy. Fuck him. Like, and Colin goes, all right, fuck him. Throw him in Vita prison. And I'm like, what? How did things turn so quickly? But it's like, you know, that moment of it being like, oh, this is an amazing, fun thing. But to them, that's just like a random thing.
Yeah.
It's not important to them.
So I'm still trying to circle us back to Dimension 20.
Dimension 20.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, so
back
back with Dimension 20.
I mean, I will say, kind of going off of that, there is an interesting aspect coming to these like all these years later as I am of like, oh, I definitely like would love to respond to, like about some of these characters and some of these decisions and stuff and be like, oh, like, you know, if I was watching this in the moment, I would maybe tweet at somebody and be like, oh my God, this was such a great decision you made, you know, even though they made that decision, you know, weeks or months ago or whatever in production or whatever.
Yeah.
But like knowing that I'm watching this all these years after the fact, I'm not going to like jump out there in somebody's mentions and be like, hey, back when you did this on Fantasy High, I thought that was a really cool thing. Great job. Keep up the great work. Cause they're just gonna be like, I mean, cool, thanks. But yeah, we're now like 3 more seasons deep in that one alone or whatever. So there's certainly like that interesting element of me kind of like being so like late to the party in this, but also, I mean, in that like an aspect of that I'm like finding myself encountering in these tabletop campaigns that they're doing is they're creating such a rich narrative and such rich characters around that table that just even as a passive observer to it, it's an engaging story, and I'm invested in these characters, and I'm invested in seeing how their story plays out in the same way that I would be in a TV show or in a you know, a good movie or a book or something like that. And so it is that like relationship that, you know, that we as people just have with characters in the medium that we enjoy or something like that. And it's just the fact that like they're not writing this, you know, off, you know, or like writing this in a writer's room, or they're writing it through play and through improvisation and through the random shit that dice are going to throw at them. And the, you know, the overarching, you know, machinations that Brennan as the game master maybe has. But like some of the best moments in these things are when the players throw him a curveball and he just rolls with it and completely like changes up the ideas that he was going to have and stuff like that.
That's the sign of a great dungeon master.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because some dungeon masters aren't confident enough to let that happen. And so they will do like Deus Ex Machina it not happening.
Yeah.
As somebody who has made that mistake before, like it seriously hurts your relationship with the players. And so seeing Brennan do stuff like that is just, it's always like embrace the chaos.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you are in the eye of the storm and the only way out is through the other side of the storm, and you just have to hit it. Like you just have to go into it. And I love that aspect of it. That's something that that is something I've definitely taken away from it. Because sometimes Brandon just like lets them just do the wildest shit.
Yeah.
And because he lets them do the wildest shit, it's fun.
Yeah. And that's like, there's that other aspect of Dimension 20 being a spin-off of College Humor and Dropout, like they're playing, like all of their campaigns are comedy campaigns. And so the one that I most recently finished of Escape for Bloodkeep, their first side quest, is this wonderful parody of the end of Lord of the Rings, but from the villain side of things. And so like all of the player characters are playing like, like for ease of like telling the story, they're Sauron's lieutenants at the moment that like the ring gets thrown into the lava, and they have to figure out, what do we do from here? Like, how can we bring him back? How do we save the land from the the good men that are coming to destroy our keep or whatever? And was just a fun subversion of so many of those ideas, and they had such a great time kind of playing with it, with halfling characters that are very clearly Frodo and Sam, or even kind of a Gollum cameo that ends up making his way in that campaign. And it's just a ton of fun seeing how they like spin those ideas on a dime. And the heart and relationship between these characters amongst that journey, and in a way that could have been like, oh yeah, they're all evil characters, so they're all going to only be looking out for themselves. But like ultimately, they, because of the nature of a campaign like that, maybe they come together and they start putting like the needs of the group over their own personal needs, in really cool and interesting ways.
I think the biggest takeaway from that, other than just like some really awesome moments for some of these characters, was the relationship that builds between Matt Mercer's character and Reika's character.
Yeah, Maggie and Leland. Yep.
Yeah, Maggie and Leland. The like coming to terms with who they like, the man they had in common with, and like the aspects of, and kind of like the realization of like the gaslighting and everything else.
He was emotionally abusing both of us.
Yeah, like there's so many really like the moment that they realize that we really have been on the same side through all of this, but he made us look like we were against each other, and like they're coming, like everybody coming together over that, and becoming a family at the end is just such a great story to be told. Granted, we just spoiled kind of like the overarching thing of Bloodkeep, but whatever, it was out years ago.
Yeah. But I mean, like, even that, like, this is very much the epitome of, like, because I knew more or less how that one ended in very broad strokes. But it's still so much more about like the journey more than the destination. And it is like the moments that all these characters have with one another over the course of that, 13 hours, 14-hour campaign, compared to like, oh yeah, like whether, like how the specific snapshot of the ending doesn't matter at all compared to everything else that's built along the way. And yeah, just like finding out that like it's pretty clear watching it that like it's Reika's first time playing, because she's asking a lot of like, okay, and I do what, or what can I do here? But like I had no idea it was Trapp's, like, or like Mike Trapp, one of his first campaigns that he played through. But then like seeing them compare like alongside, more veteran players and performers, like obviously Matt Mercer, of Critical Role fame. And I knew like Amy had played a lot, and Erika Ishii. And
Matt Mercer, seeing him as a player is so much fun. Like, getting like, it really is like, if you've been the forever DM, getting to finally play a character is just really ecstatic.
I know that Brennan gets to play like actual player characters in some of the later side quests and stuff, and I can't wait to get to one of those because I just want to see.
He's only done it in one so far.
Okay, is it the Harry Potter one?
Yeah, the Magic and Misfits, which is like a tremendously wonderful season.
Yeah,
it's too short in my opinion. It should have been longer, but they know what they're doing, and it's coming back with a sequel season for like the Christmas season at the end of the year.
He's also right now in a D&D Beyond campaign that I saw is going out there. So like that's one I might try and like branch out, because like he is just such a fascinating person in D&D, like
in life.
In life in general, yes, absolutely. But yeah, like having.
Did you know he was on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
I did not know that. No.
Yeah, look it up. He is fantastic.
Okay.
The only reason he works at College Humor and all this has happened is because of what he won on like that.
Yeah.
There's a adventuring side quest for, I think it's the Leviathan like side quest campaign. Once they return to Matt Mercer. And he goes into like that experience from his perspective, but you can find the episode online on YouTube. It's it's not like too interesting. It's like, but it's like Brennan's a really interesting guy. He's really fascinating as a person.
I feel like that's another one, like watching him on Game Changer or Actually and stuff like that over the, like, before ever seeing this and just College Humor sketches in general and stuff, like seeing now this D&D side of him and the Adventuring Academy kind of podcast and watching the episodes of that and just hearing his like approach the room, just like, this guy's just a cool guy. And I'm very excited to continue to see. But yeah, the fact that like he's talked a number of times of like he's been playing since he was 10 and he's never gotten a character past level 7, and that kind of like journey, because he is the forever DM. I very much look forward to like seeing him on the other side of the coin.
It is magical. Yeah. It is truly magical.
It's fun. I'm enjoying.
I'm not going to say anything about it because I do not want to spoil anything about it for you.
Yeah, but yeah, like I mean, even we'll wrap up because I know you have an out.
Yeah,
basically.
I got hurry
out. But like the Unsleeping City was like the second campaign I watched, and just the idea of like setting a campaign in New York and like it's the magic kind of hidden within the city, but also like it's a parallel universe kind of situation. I was like, that's just a really cool idea, and clearly everybody at that table like knows New York like the back of their hand because they're pulling out like, wait, is it this stop? Which side are we on? and kind of like,
so interesting enough, Lou Wilson never lived in New York.
Okay, well, like I guess he's not the one that I'm like I'm talking about Siobhan, really, but
Siobhan, Emily, like Murph, because they're old College Humor back when College Humor was in New York.
Yeah.
And so like they have memories of living in New York. Also, like Emily Axford's like actually like a Rockefeller or something. She's like like from one of those old money families. You find out fascinating stuff in Adventure Academy.
Yeah.
As like some stuff about it.
Yeah, so looking forward to continuing my time now that, because I just was like, screw it, I'm like, there's plenty here, I'll just pay for the full year. So I have plenty of dropout stuff to.
It's only $5 a month. It's super inexpensive. And you like the amount of content you get from it is just so much, like, so worth it.
Yeah. So
even to the points where like if there's a month where there hasn't been anything new coming out on it, I still keep it because like why not?
Yeah,
it's $5
and plenty of stuff to go back and just enjoy the hell out of.
100%.
Like they'll talk about a moment in like Adventuring Academy, and I'm like, that was a great moment. I'm just gonna go back and like find that clip and just like replay that chunk of the episode.
Justin McElroy's introduction of Rick Diggins is still one of my top 5 favorite moments because it's the pauses that he puts in there, like the pregnant pauses, and like Brennan's about to go in, and then he like goes back into his explain his backstory is just such a good like control of a moment and momentum, and just like yeah, what happens if you're like in a nightmare situation as a toy that needs like a magical source to survive, and so you're like in a half-life. Like it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Love it. And then he mentions things like Paw Patrol and whatnot. And it's like, as somebody who's been an uncle forever.
Pup Squad, yeah. He just went on this whole tangent about Pup Squad and watching Pup Squad and stuff. And I was like, that's clearly a Paw Patrol thing.
Yep. This is this man is a father, clearly. But as an uncle, I also appreciate those references.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's fantastic.
So, yeah, that's me enjoying the hell out of some early Dimension 20 stuff, and I look forward to just kind of seeing. I'm especially going to be curious when they get into the like we had to go into the pandemic era of these things. So I've seen like clips and stuff, and just like playing the games over Zoom and stuff. But it'd be interesting to see how that changes the feel around the table aspects.
Fantasy High Season 2 sophomore year is when that happens,
Mhm.
because it's really suffers because they were doing it as a live show on Twitch.
Mhm.
And so it has a different feel to it that way, but also um, on top of that, you get like a situation where not too long after they started, College Humor had to like lay off people.
Yeah, basically like the parent company said, "Fuck this place, we're done with it," and
and left them with nothing. Yeah.
yeah, and they
Um,
basically had to kind of yeah. That's the other like fascinating aspect is knowing that aspect or knowing that side of the College Humor story and realizing I'm still watching things from before that happens.
yep.
And
So that happens for that season, and then at the very end of the season finales have to be done over Zoom.
yeah,
And like it's a struggle. It's just a struggle. Sure as hell isn't helped by the fact that like Brandon was using like an Apple like iPhone attachment for his mic, and it's like, God damn it, Brandon, get a decent mic, you son of a bitch.
mm-hmm. Well,
Um,
I look forward to suffering as you
Yeah.
have.
I wasn't suffering because the story is still great.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. Unsleeping City season 2 was entirely done during the pandemic.
Yeah.
But the quality is top notch for that.
Much better. Yeah. Yeah. 'Cause I've watched the first episode of Unsleeping City 2 because I watched a lot of the stuff that they had up on YouTube before I finally bit the bullet and just did drop out. And first episode of Unsleeping City season 2 was on there. So I've kind of seen that and picking up, and I'm curious to see, like, because obviously a couple of those characters or a couple of those people are playing different characters. And so I'm curious to see what happens.
You mean Cody, Night Angel?
Yeah.
Such a good character. Like,
Yeah.
I'm so excited for you to get into season 2 of that one, man.
Yeah.
That one like blew my socks off because I was like, I don't know how you're gonna like top Unsleeping City season 1,
Mm-hmm.
and then they did in the most magical way.
Yeah. Well, I think we will call it there. Thank you for joining me today, Cam, to chat all these fun little things. Let's go around the table and make any plugs. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, I wanted to give a massive shout out to youtube.com/thatnerdysite. We have, Trevor just finished his Nintendo collection. What is that device called? The
NES Classic.
And yeah, he just finished up the NES Classic collection. Let's Plays are up there. You can go back and see him play through all of those. Sometimes it's just fun to see Trevor find himself realizing that a game is bad because it's old and out of date.
Yeah. And you find that a lot on some of those NES games. Those are also like probably the easily most bite size of our Let's Plays, because those are always like 20 minutes or less usually, because that's the era of those games, compared to like my first hour of Forza Horizon, or sitting through and playing all of Life is Strange Before the Storm or something. But yeah, you can go check those out certainly. Cool. Thank you for that shout out. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. I will shout out our last couple episodes of That D Plus show. Have been me, Cam, Frank, and our friend Christian sitting down and discussing the latter half of the Star Wars Visions episodes. You can also go and watch like our first episode of that, but that was from like a month and a half ago or whatever. So you can find all of those out on both on our YouTube as well as the That D Plus channel, That D Plus show channel, or you can watch anything we do over at That Nerdy Site or thatnerdysite.com. Check out That Nerdy Site for all the latest from all of us. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please rate, review, like, subscribe, ring notification bells, all that fun stuff. Leave comments, I guess. Anything else out there that you can do to interact and help the algorithms, boost our numbers so that other people get to see or hear and experience our thoughts on these kinds of things. Thank you for listening. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.